Free Transform is an excellent tool when you want to add a quick warp to an image. In this example, I have a file that has a logo layer with a border as well as an image. And I want to warp all three of these layers as a single unit. So in the Layers panel, I'll select the waterfall layer, hold down the Shift key, and then click on the logo layer to select them all. To convert them to a smart object, I'll right-click in the Layers panel and then choose Convert to Smart Object. Then, under the Edit menu, I'll select Free Transform or use the keyboard shortcut Command-T or Control-T. I'll start resizing this down, holding down the Shift key in order to constrain the proportions, reposition it, and transform it or scale it a little bit more to fit the width of the bottle. Then, instead of applying the transformation, I'll click on the Warp icon in the Options bar. There are a number of different warp presets that we can select from, things like arcs and arches. There's even a fish warp. I'm going to start with the bulge option, but it's a little bit too much. I can use the bend option in order to shrink it down, but I actually want to control the top of the warp and the bottom of the warp independent from one another. So once I've selected bulge as the starting point, then I'll select custom from the list. Now I can position my cursor inside the transformation handles, and I can drag in order to warp this. I can use Command-Z in order to undo that. I can select any of the anchor points in order to give the image a warp. I can even bring it all the way across the top to see kind of the back side of it. Again, I'll use Command-Z in order to undo that. I can also click on any of the direction points in order to change the warp. Again, I'll use Command-Z to undo. Or I can click on the lines themselves in order to change the warp. Now, I'm going to zoom in to 100% using Command-1 and reposition the image in the image area by holding down the space bar. That'll give me access to the hand tool. That'll just enable me to see how much I need to warp. So I'm looking at the top of the bottle and I'm going to try to match that with the warp. So I'm going to bring this down. My label barely needs any warp at the top, but then at the bottom, I'm going to need to add more. So I'll hold down the space bar again, reposition the image, and again, I'm looking at the shape of the bottle in order to find a reference, and I just want to click and drag that in order to mimic that shape. Now it looks like I need to transform this a little bit smaller, so I'm going to return back to Free Transform by clicking on the Warp icon again. Then I'll hold down the Shift key, drag the lower corner up a little bit until it's the same width as the bottle. Then I'll tap the check mark or tap Return or Enter in order to apply that transformation and the warp. I'll use Command-0 in order to fit in window and see the entire image. Now, if I wanted to make changes, for example, to the logo, I could double-click on it in the Layers panel. That would open the Smart Object so that I could edit the contents. I'll use my Move tool and just reposition the logo up a little bit. I'll select File and then Save, and then File and then Close in order to update the edited contents of the Smart Object in the parent document. And to make this look a little bit more realistic, I'm going to add a Curves adjustment layer by clicking on the adjustment layer at the bottom of the Layers panel. I'll choose Curves. I'll want to darken the curve, so I'll click in the center and pull down. But I only want this adjustment layer to affect the logo. So on the Properties panel, I'll click on the Clipping Mask icon. And now the curves are only affecting that logo. But I don't want it to affect the center of the logo, so I'll tap the B key in order to select my brush tool. I'll use the right bracket key in order to get a larger brush, and I'll paint with black down through the center of the logo in order to hide the curves adjustment there. So the curves adjustment is simply darkening down the edges of the logo to make it look a little bit more realistic, like it's bending around the bottle. So there you go, an easy way to add a warp to an image using Smart Objects in Photoshop.